Hey guys, so some of us have been turning in some really good scripts and whatnot, and I've been leaving comments and all that, and I thought, this might be just an easier way to touch base if I could just give you some verbal feedback as well. So, a lot of us are writing dystopian fiction, which is fantastic. It's a great, great genre. It allows you to make a lot of good commentary on political, social, and economic circumstances. And frankly, the time in which we live right now is very ripe and rich for such commentary. So, um, I just want to give you some tips, right, on how to do this better because a lot of us, we've got our story started, and that's good, but we've only got like a partial story. So we're actually ending our video drama or our radio drama, sorry, about like 1/3 to halfway through what should be the whole piece. So, first thing to pay attention to, number one, make sure that you clearly describe the place of comfort and familiarity in your story. Now, what I mean is, this place is chosen so that you can actually get the audience back to that point. And I emphasize audience because really that's who you're trying to pay attention to, and that's who you're telling your story to. The place of comfort is the starting point. It's recognizable. Your audience needs to find a lot of relatable details about this point of comfort, even if it's in a dystopian world that's alien and super far in the future. For example, if it's set in, let's say, like a time where there's people in a science lab and this crazy pandemics broke out again, you have to describe a little bit then, like an average lab or things about this worker's daily life or the stresses they're going through, so that we connect with them and we connect with the environment and the world in which they live. They have a family, they have a job, there's crazy bad wealth misdistribution in the world, kind of like there is now, etc., etc. So make sure you describe things in enough detail that your audience relates to it. It could be more space opera-y, kind of like Star Wars, where the world's really, really different from what we live in, but the details and features are still understandable. Like your protagonist works for an artificial intelligence, and nobody talks to it, but it decides like basically everything, like the water, the electricity, the food, and it's instructed people to do this job, to like find a cure for a disease or something like that. Um, you still described in the people as being very human like. They get scared, they're worried, they still have people that they love, they're super loyal to their community, things like that. All right, so that's your point of comfort that needs to get well established. Step two is describing the need that the protagonist experiences. That is mostly well done. That's like the pandemic breaking out, or basically something going really bad in society, and the protagonist is like, I've gotta solve this problem. Okay? The thing though that you can use to help yourself is, in this need that you establish, is use a motif. So I didn't write this explicitly yet, but some of us are ready for it. A motif is a repeating sound, image, or pattern idea that is omnipresent. It is always present through the whole story, and it actually melds and changes with the protagonist and with the environment. The changes in the motif help the audience understand actually like how significant the changes are and how fast the changes are happening. Okay? This motif is essentially what helps you plot the journey from the point of comfort to the place of conflict and back again. So, motifs can be, sorry, I got something in my eye here. Motifs could be just like sound effects that are part of your environment. I think it's 2001 Space Odyssey, the movie. There's an AI named Hal that basically takes over the space station and like won't let this human out, and he starts slowly like killing him and everyone on board. One of the great motifs, it's one of the great motifs of film. Stanley Kubrick basically uses this glaring red eye, and he shows this glaring red eye which it's supposed to just be a generic camera that's all over this space station, to help like observe environmental things. But what happens is this glaring red eye. Look it up on YouTube, right? HAL, Space Odyssey 2001 or whatever. It inspires such great fear in you as the audience and the viewer. It's super red. It's super big with how they project it into the visual range. And essentially, the protagonist actually directly just starts talking to these red sensors and like, Hal, let me out. Hal, let me do this. Hal, let me do that. And then Hal eventually later in the story speaks back. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Humanity can't be trusted. Things like that. But like that red eye sensor, that thing showed up like basically at the very beginning of the story, and it was a brilliant way to embed this pattern. Sounds in like a laboratory or sounds in the general environment of the protagonist make fantastic motifs. Sounds are nice because you can change them through time, through distortion or filters essentially in GarageBand or Soundtrap. Okay, so really use that to your advantage. Words are also really great motifs when you want to describe changes in the psychology and perspective of your protagonist. Okay? All right. So establish point of comfort, establish motifs, and use them well. Step 3 then is after the need and all that's been described, hey, pandemic broke out, humanity's dying, we don't know what's happening. The next thing is you've got to push your story forward. So, make your protagonist undergo some great trials and suffering, make them pursue whatever goal it is that, whether it's creating a cure or running away from the pandemic or whatever it is, right? But basically, most of us stop at step 3, which is go through the hard stuff. That's not even halfway through your story. Keep going, where you ultimately, step 4, you actually give the protagonist what they want. So this means like they invent the cure. They escape the pandemic to this isolated little village on top of a mountain or something like that. Whatever. They, save people by getting them inside this super fortified building and they feel safe. Whatever. Step 6, I believe, is, maybe step 5. Yeah, step 5, though, is basically it costs them too much. So your protagonist gets what they want. They invent the cure, they get to the safe place, whatever it is, and then suddenly you realize, oh my God, this other terrible thing happened because I got what I asked for. This is the twist. Okay, this is what makes it a good story versus just kind of an average parable. Even average parables, though, they have that twist of, oh, I didn't realize it would cost me so much. So, for example, person inventing the cure. They were in a lab, they spent all their time in a lab, and their wife ended up catching it. And even though they found the cure, their wife died alone without them because they were working in the lab. The cost was very great. It cost them their last moments with their wife. Person who's leading humanity away from, hordes of infected people, basically the zombie story. That, you get into the safe building and then you realize, oh, we don't actually have any food. And now we're trapped in here. Like, we had more options out there because at least we could forage for food in the grocery stores. So now it's cost us our mobility and our safety. Whatever. Okay, so figure out that your protagonist gets what they want, but it costs them a really high price. And from that, they learn a really hard life lesson. Okay? Then, moving forward, after this point of your protagonist and your audience realizing, oh my God, I didn't realize that the solution or whatever would cost so much, then you work your way back to that point of comfort. And it's usually psychological, and this is where wisdom starts settling into your character. They have to fight their way back. They have to go through more trials, but because they went through the earlier trials in step 3, they're wiser, they're stronger, they're perhaps more confident in their ability. This can range from everything from, hey, we don't have the cure anymore because it got lost or my wife died or whatever, but I'm going to focus on the people around me. whatever it is. Okay, so and make sure that you are reusing your motif, but your motif needs to be adapted and changed, and it needs to show the pain and exhaustion or twisting of your protagonist, mentally, physically, or all of the above. Okay. Then basically, you journey your protagonist back to the land of the familiar. So this means they actually are coming back to their environment. Like if this is the person that ran up the mountain and escaped with people in this really remote place, well, then they need to actually come back to the village that they left. But they need to have this ability, this knowledge, to maybe have a better life and make life better for others. If it's the person who both invented the cure but their wife died on them anyway, then they bring the cure back out to the community, and they save everyone else, and then they realize, oh, we should really be spending our time with our loved ones above all things. Work is not a reason to sacrifice family, whatever. And then by the end of your story, you have clearly described basically what does your protagonist now know that they didn't know at the beginning. How are they more mature? And then let the motif that you've built essentially express that in sound. All these things together make for a good story circle. And then what gets layered on top of this is your soundscape and your sound effects. So a lot of us, like, our scripts are really heavy on these sound effects and soundscapes, and that's great that you're thinking about that, because that really sets the mood. But I want to turn your guys' attention now to the core of the story, basically. I thought there was a little bit more work done on structuring the story itself. It seems that's okay, that maybe there wasn't, and that's fine. So turn your attention to make sure that the circle of the story is present, that we actually reach a point of resolution, and that the maturation in the protagonist is very clear and very obvious to your audience. After that has been established, then start layering your sound effects and soundscape on top of that. All these together will make for a very primo, very awesome dystopian story. If you're really struggling still, like Ms. D, I don't want a happy ending or whatever, that's cool. I can help you with that. I can get more specific with you and your group. But I just wanted to kind of throw out some advice to everyone, generally, because we're all kind of getting stuck in the goopiness that can be dystopian stories. Okay? So, keep writing these great stories. Definitely keep reflecting on what's going on in the world around you, and include these ideas and criticisms in your story. That's really what dystopian fiction is about. Just be a little bit more clear about what messages you want to send to your audience, because what you think and what you feel, that is really what I'm looking for. I'm looking to understand that as your audience, okay? And then that's what's motivating a lot of the feedback that I put on these documents. So keep trucking, and let me know if you have any questions, all right?